Okay, we'll start with this. Naoya Inoue's father and trainer, Shingo Inoue, has revealed he believes it's fine if Inoue retires soon. How many more fights is he gonna have? Honestly, it's probably fine for him to retire soon. He can walk away at the perfect time while still being a legend. I haven't discussed it with Naoya directly, but I feel, how many more fights does he have to do? It's enough. He can quit abruptly while the going is good, remaining a legend. Now currently, there are plans in place for Naoya Inoue to square off against Bam Rodriguez, provided that Bam wins his next one or two fights and subsequently ascends to the super bantamweight division. And I feel, like Shingo, that Inoue can retire off that. There's nothing more to do, there's nothing left to prove. There are very few four-weight world champions in the sport of boxing, and even fewer two-time undisputed champions. Sticking around after having accomplished so much already is tantamount to the side quests that you go on after you beat the game, after you beat Grand Theft Auto or Arkham City.
It's like one long bonus round, having already fought in a good number of super fights. The fight that he had with Stephen Fulton, the showdown with Luis Neri, and the even bigger one with his domestic rival, Junto Nakatanyi.
And it's not a question of money either. I don't think there is another Japanese fighter in combat sports who has earned as much as a professional fighter as Inoue. Currently, he's one of the top paid fighters in the sport today, in the entire world.
$32 million gate from two super bantamweights facing each other is unprecedented, because even the most accomplished fighters at those weights don't make that kind of scratch, that kind of cash, not before Naoya Inoue, and that's just the gate. That's not counting pay-per-view sales, that's not counting sponsorships and endorsements.
From a historical perspective, not only is Naoya Inoue the biggest draw in terms of boxing that Japan would have ever produced, but he is single-handedly the most accomplished fighter they've ever produced.
One of the most accomplished fighters the sport has ever seen, yes, but easily the most accomplished fighter Japan has ever given the sport of boxing, so that sticking around at this point is a pointless endeavor. It's not a question of unfinished business, it's not a question of money, it's not a question of legacy or accolades. He's a world-traveled fighter. He's fought in America more than once, and in the United Kingdom, and in Saudi.
He ticks off on a lot of boxes that a lot of other boxers don't tick off on. There's no reason to really keep fighting. He can quit while he's ahead, retire while he's young and fresh, and don't let somebody get to him. I don't see a reason for him to keep fighting beyond the Bam Rodriguez fight. I did hear a blurb about a plan for Inoue to maybe move up to featherweight next year, which I'm not really a fan of. I don't think any of the champions up there deserve it, as they are not showing the same ambition that he has across four weight classes, so they shouldn't benefit from a fight with him.
That might sound like something a fanboy would say, but what do you want me to say? You've got an entire thing of champions up there staying away from each other, not unifying, because they're all waiting for him. It's ridiculous.
It shouldn't be encouraged. When Shingo Inoue says that, how many fights is it going to be? When is enough enough? I completely understand that sentiment, and I don't want to see Inoue stick around long enough that he loses some fight to some guy who he probably could have beat in his prime.
There are so many other fighters who retired from the sport of boxing having accomplished less, much less, than Naoya Inoue. Consider Andre Ward, who retired a two-time, two-weight, unified champion. Anything that he did at super middle and light heavy, Inoue would have done that and more across more weight classes. Andre Ward had the same opportunity to become an undisputed champion at those two weights that Inoue has had. The difference is Inoue didn't. Andre didn't, and Andre is regarded as an accomplished fighter, a Hall of Fame fighter.
Leaving some food on the plate, some unfinished business before walking away from the sport at 32 years old, where I believe that Inoue is 33. I just don't see a reason for him to keep fighting. Andre Ward, Joe Calzaghe, these are regarded as accomplished, highly esteemed professionals, and Inoue is even more accomplished than them.
So why keep fighting? What else is there to do?
I would like to see Inoue fight one more time before this year is out, presumably against the mandatory for one of the 4 titles that he still holds, settle up with Bam Rodriguez in a fight that I think he can win in the coming calendar year, and then after that, retire, because there's nothing left to do, there's nothing left to prove. He's had a storied boxing career that I think people will be talking about for years.
I agree with Shingo. Enough is enough.
So as one fighter may be nearing the end of his boxing career, his retirement, another fighter who's already retired seems to have unretired as Vasiliy Lomachenko is coming out of retirement and targeting a return in the fall of this year. Sources tell The Ring's Mike Coppinger Lomachenko's contract with Top Rank expires today, and he is now a promotional free agent seeking the biggest fights possible.
Vasiliy Lomachenko retired at age 37. Currently, he's now 38 going on 39, looking for the biggest fights and I assume the biggest checks that perhaps Top Rank at this point cannot deliver him. The thing about Vasiliy Lomachenko is, as successful as he was, he never made the kind of money that his countryman Oleksandr Usyk made.
And he never really had the signature fights, or signature wins, I should say, that Oleksandr Usyk has had over the likes of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. He never went undisputed like him either across two divisions, though Vasiliy Lomachenko wanted to. He tried. It never happened. So what could be bringing him out of retirement now? Has he gained renewed passion for the sport, or did somebody convince him? They say that he is now a network and promotional free agent, and you want to pay attention to that.
Because until further notice, there's nothing that says that he comes back under the Top Rank banner, could come back under the Matchroom banner for all we know, or the Zuffa banner.
Nothing's off the table until we have official confirmation under what promotional banner will Vasiliy Lomachenko be fighting moving forward, and at what weight, because I wouldn't rule out a return to 130 or 135. Vasiliy Lomachenko never really been that big a guy.
I think if he worked at it, he could probably still get back down to 130 pounds, or just come back at 135 where he left off. What I don't think is that he'll come back at 140. I think that's a bridge too far for a guy his size. Remember that he retired at his third weight.
They say that he's pursuing the biggest fights. He doesn't want any tune-ups. What today represents the biggest fight for a Vasiliy Lomachenko? I'm going to assume we're talking about alphabet titles. We're talking about world champions. I would give him reasonable odds today over a Raymond Murataya,
The IBF champion.
and you could probably give him reasonable odds over the WBO champion Abdullah Mason for the simple fact that even though Abdullah's got a belt, Abdullah's still a bit green around the gills. The best guy that he's fought so far is Sam Noakes.
What could soon be the newly crowned WBC champion, the winner of the William Zepeda versus Lamont Roach fight set to go down late in the summer. If Vasiliy Lomachenko is returning in the fall, that might be right on time to challenge the winner of that fight. And of course, there is Gervonta Davis, who Vasiliy Lomachenko pursued for a number of years and to no avail.
He wasn't able to get him while he was still in his prime, and it seems like Gervonta Davis didn't warm up to the idea of that fight until he saw that Vasiliy was ready to retire. Then he wanted to have it, but by then, he was a day late and a dollar short. So now that he's coming back, does that fight become a talking point again?
I don't think so.
Between Gervonta Davis's natural cowardice and the fact that he's all tied up in litigation right now over that domestic abuse case, I don't think Vasiliy Lomachenko picks up where he left off exactly. He's coming back, but in coming back, he's not limited to pursuing any specific fighter for a big payday because things are different now.
You know, Vasiliy Lomachenko is one of the few fighters that didn't get a Saudi bag. As he was making his exit from the sport of boxing, that's when Turkey made his entry. So what if that's who he's coming back with? With Zuffa or with Turkey?
If you would indulge me. If he's coming back through conventional means to fight for conventional belts, the lightweight division has not become so inhospitable that he can't become a champion again. And if he does, he will re-enter the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
At 38 years old.
If he can manage to pick up one of the traditional 4 alphabet titles. Now, if he goes over there to Zuffa and he fights for them, he stands an even better chance of winning a belt, winning their belt, but that won't get him on the list.
Ring IQ does not recognize the Zuffa belt as a legitimate alphabet title, but when you think about him fighting for a Zuffa belt and coming back over there, he stands an even bigger chance of winning a belt because they've got a more shallow talent pool. They don't have as many fighters to choose from. Their lightweight division is even weaker than what you see in the existing framework.
So that could theoretically work out too. And the reason I keep bringing up Zuffa is because Zuffa just started out. You know, they just launched earlier this year, and they want to cultivate as many familiar faces and fighters as possible to increase their brand power because they're the new kids on the block. You're fucking off money on fighters like Richardson Hitchens and Edgar Berlanga and whatever you're set to waste on Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson, fighters who don't entertain anybody. So who's to say they wouldn't also fuck off some money on Loma? He's a lot more fun to watch than they are.
Devin robbed him.
I haven't soon forgotten the daylight robbery in what was the Devin Haney versus Vasiliy Lomachenko fight. Perhaps that's why in some ways I'm glad to see him back, to add some more accolades to his career.
That fight broke his spirit, man. That fight broke his heart. So close to undisputed, and having won it in the eyes of a lot of people.
They fucked him over. Remember, there's a whole year in between the controversial loss to Devin Haney and the knockout win over George Kambosos. He didn't see a reason to keep fighting after that. He just did it because his father asked him to.
That's what he said.
Though if he lost his passion for the sport after that controversial outcome and called it a career after the Kambosos fight, what could be bringing him out of retirement now? And I think it's money. Not necessarily because he's strapped for cash, but because he's being offered a lot of money to come back.
Loma's not the guy that gets his fight purse and runs out and buys a Bugatti or a private jet. He's not that kind of fighter. He's not ostentatious like that. So I'm sure that he's got his little nest egg.
He's got money set aside. I don't think he has to keep fighting. I think he's been convinced to because they've made him an offer that he can't refuse. An offer so good, it would be foolhardy not to take it. And I still think he's got enough ability, even at 38, that he can do all right if he comes back. It's exciting news. I don't think anybody expected this.
But I also don't get the sense that Vasiliy Lomachenko is unretiring for more of the same, to continue at Top Rank or one of the other promoters we already know like Matchroom. I get the impression, I get the sense.
I sense the involvement of Turki El Sheikh and perhaps of Zuffa Boxing, who are looking for familiar faces and fighters to increase their brand trust and their brand power. And I don't mind it at all if I can watch Vasiliy Lomachenko fight on Paramount.
Preliminary thoughts? It's welcome news. I'm glad to see he's back, and I look forward to seeing him fight again later on in the year. Against who? We'll find out.
Over to Dana White's recent commentary about the loss of U.S. buying power in the sport of boxing, something that I've talked about here on the channel for years and something that he must have just realized now that he's on this side of the business, not on the outside looking in. Dana White believes boxing no longer carries the same power in the United States that once made the sport untouchable during the heavyweight boom of the 1990s and early 2000s. Speaking after Zuffa Boxing 6 in Las Vegas, White explained why the company is aggressively targeting the UK market, while outlining his belief that boxing's center of gravity has moved away from America over the last 2 decades. Yeah, I mean, we have an incredible Sky deal, so we're gonna do a lot of fights over in the UK, White said. Asked whether Britain could become one of Zuffa's major markets, White added, realistically, over the last 15 to 20 years, boxing has become a European sport. It definitely doesn't have the same power it had in the United States in the 90s.
And there are so many contributing factors to this, more than I can fit in a single segment or a single video, but that's the bottom line. Boxing is not the sport that it once was in this country.
White's comments will raise eyebrows in some quarters, but it is difficult to argue with much of what the UFC boss is saying. The biggest American boxing events of recent years have largely revolved around fights such as Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence, Ryan Garcia against either Gervonta Davis or Devin Haney. Outside of those events, many of the sport's biggest nights now involve non-American stars, leaving the era of mass interest, all-American rivalries like Holyfield versus Bowe, Tyson's heavyweight reign, and Gatti versus Ward firmly in the past.
If we could just focus on that aspect of it, what changed for the American boxer, and why is the American boxer not as compelling as he used to be? It's because the American boxer wants to be a businessman more than a boxer, a mogul, a rapper, a realtor.
They don't pride themselves on being fighters the same way that they used to. Now, Dana White believes that Zuffa can help change that. I mean, look at what we've done in just 4 months. Look at tonight White said, following Shane Mosley Jr.'s upset win over Sergey Boachuk at Zuffa Boxing 6. And look at how these guys are fighting right now. Tonight was a great card, and they're only going to get better. What starts to happen when you build from the bottom up is, you create built-in storylines. Now, you already have guys calling out other guys inside of our universe. Here. And this is how it all starts. Mosley Jr.'s immediate post-fight challenge to Callum Walsh perfectly fit the kind of internal rivalry system White has spent years building through the UFC model. However, the rivalry still centers on US versus Ireland, and rebuilding American boxing power may take far longer than simply launching another promotion.
And more than making a fight between Mosley and Walsh, though Dana White is touching on something that's very real, and a part of how Zuffa can help that along in their own way is they're providing boxing that doesn't cost you much. A Paramount Plus subscription costs a lot less than a DAZN subscription. Accessibility to the fights matters a great deal.
It is also not as though White is building the company exclusively around American fighters after Conor Benn signed a long-term Zuffa agreement earlier this year. White's most significant acquisition to date remains a British boxer rather than an American one. At the same time, reports have linked Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, and Teofimo Lopez to the growing Zuffa roster, potentially giving White several major All-American matchups to build around in the future that may ultimately become the key to whether White's vision succeeds or fails. Outside of Haney and Stevenson, there are very few American pound-for-pound names capable of carrying boxing back into the mainstream conversation consistently.
Well, I don't think those boring fucks are the ones to do it, but they can try.
White clearly believes Zuffa can change that over time. The bigger question is, how long will it take to build the kind of American boxing superstars capable of bringing boxing back to the cultural position it once held in America? And as stated, I think accessibility to the fights matters a great deal, because a part of what led to boxing's decline in this country is everybody insisted on boxing on pay-per-view, hoping that they would make the same kind of money Floyd made doing the same thing, except they're not Floyd.
The inflated purse demands of so many fighters in the United States caused the operational cost of everything to go up, to the point where a large portion of the boxing, the big-time boxing, is ending up behind a paywall. And it didn't used to be that way. When boxing was a mainstream sport, it was accessible to everybody. But the more fighters that end up on pay-per-view, the less fighters people end up seeing. And that's a part of it. Where Zuffa has a leg up on the competition is, it doesn't cost much to watch their fights.
Paramount Plus subscription costs a lot less than a DAZN subscription, and whatever Zuffa's doing that ends up on Netflix, it's really the same thing. I don't know if Zuffa's gonna work in the long run, but they've got a good idea.
So we'll see.